Yes, that's right. The only one here who can possibly be the killer is you.
It has to be you!
Diana, it's you, isn't it?
Huh? The makeup girl?
She's the only one here without an alibi. Those of us who attended the tournament can obviously be ruled out. And as for those who didn't, Desmond and Eloise were in the courtyard. Toshiko and Ingrid were in the same dorm room.
What about Winona? She never mentioned an alibi.
Give me a break.
Winona and I were in the building with the tree all morning. In fact, yes, Desmond and Eloise should have witnessed us walking over there, as those two were in the courtyard at the time.
Yeah, that's true.
I just want to point out, while I have a moment, the music in this game. Oh boy, it's good! And there's a lot of it. There's a lot of tracks, and it's good, and I like it. And I may have already liked a lot of them on Spotify. It's fine, there are no spoilers in the track titles or anything. It's just cool music.
In that case, Diana really is the only one without an alibi. Guys,
If she's the person who fled the boiler room, those footsteps we heard make a lot more sense. Heels make a pretty loud clop sound on hard floors, and the underground hallway's floor is pretty hard. Diana would obviously want to take them off. Also, heels aren't comfy to run in.
Whoa! I didn't even think of it like that. You're totally right, though. Since Diana's the only one here with heels, she would have to take them off.
guys, what are you talking about? Me? A killer? Do you really think I could be a killer?
The fact you weren't at the tournament is incriminating enough.
Not just that. Everyone but you has an alibi.
But I do have an alibi, right, Ava?
Huh?
You woke up with me this morning, and you never saw me leave my dorm.
During the brief amount of time we were together, I never saw you leave. What you did after I left for the game tournament, however, is anyone's guess.
Ava wanted to help me and Cash set up the tournament, so we told her to swing by early.
For that reason, I left Diana's dorm at 8:05 a.m. I know the exact time since her room has a clock.
And Wolfgang was in the corridor at 8:10.
I probably entered the dining hall around 8:10 a.m.-ish.
So much for an alibi then.
Diana, don't tell me.
Holy smokes, it's all falling into place!
Are we sure there hasn't been some sort of misunderstanding?
It's not possible. Diana can't be the killer. No! I refuse to believe it!
Looks like some people out here aren't willing to face the facts. That's not a problem. I'll make them face the facts. Whether they like it or not, soon enough, nobody will be able to doubt Diana. Let me try that line again. Whether they like it or not, soon enough, nobody will be able to deny Diana killed Wolfgang.
If it was Diana inside that boiler room, could she be the one who left the blood trail? 'Cause if so, that might be her blood on the knife too.
Diana's blood? Are you saying she wounded herself? Wounded herself? What makes you think that? I don't know! Why else would the killer's blood be on their own weapon?
Did we not already agree the killer was wielding a rolling pin?
Well, maybe they had both. The rolling pin in one hand, and the knife in the other. Dual-wielding weapons? Holy, this killer's next level.
That person's point is clearly impossible. I should realize as much if I point out that piece of evidence.
If it was Diana inside that boiler room,
Could she be the one who left the blood trail? 'Cause if so, that might be her blood in the mouth too. Diana, correct? Are you saying she wounded herself? Wounded herself?
What makes you think that?
Did we not already agree? The killer was wielding a rolling pin? Well, maybe they had both. In hand.
No, that's wrong! No. The killer was only wielding the rolling pin during their confrontation with Wolfgang. You can tell just from looking at the pin. There are 2 handprints wrapped around the edge, as if the killer had been holding the pin like a tennis racket. Which makes sense, because you can swing with more force if you use both hands. And that's what a killer wants when trying to knock out a grown man.
Then, who held the knife?
It wasn't the killer, so it was most likely the only other person in the boiler room. Wolfgang Akire.
I agree.
What the hell are you talking about? Wolfgang, carrying a dangerous weapon? Bullshit!
If you were in his situation, wouldn't you?
Huh?
Wolfgang received an anonymous message asking him to meet in a basement, all whilst in the middle of a killing game. At that point, it doesn't matter how much of an optimist he is. He'd know better than to come unarmed.
A knife isn't super hard to find, either. Wolfgang probably just stole one from the kitchen.
Besides, if Diana is the one who got stabbed, it would explain the blood trail. Think about it. She arms herself with the rolling pin and attacks Wolfgang, getting hurt by him in the process. For some reason, possibly because of the blackout, she doesn't clean the blood trail she's leaving, and returns to her dorm room after.
No! That's wrong!
Huh?
I wasn't stabbed. If I was stabbed, then I'd have an injury. But there's nothing, right? There's nothing on me.
Depends. If a vein got nipped, you'd be seeing blood no matter the size of the cut. Of course, that also means a small cut will need bandaging, which I'm not seeing on you.
You may not see any injuries on Diana, but that doesn't mean they aren't there.
Huh?
If she wanted, she could simply hide her injuries from view. After all, someone like her has exactly what it takes.
I got it.
Talent. As the ultimate cosmetologist, Diana could easily cover her wounds.
It makes sense. With the right equipment, she could probably disguise even a bandaged wound.
As Diana's bunking partner, I've seen firsthand how many different cosmetics are inside her room. So unfortunately, I have to agree.
Well, Diana, did I get anything wrong?
No. No. But
Wait. Diana, did you just say no? As in, no, you're not wrong that I covered up my wounds? Oh, crap. You guys know what this means, right, guys? Diana basically just confessed!
a confession? Are you for real?
It makes sense, though, doesn't it? Diana got wounded, which proves she got in a fight with Wolfgang, which means all that stuff about Wolfgang going to the boiler room, all that stuff really did happen.
I see. I see now what you're saying. Diana, she lured Wolfgang to the boiler room by writing him that note. And when he arrived, she attacked him and killed him. And now, she's been lying this entire trial, hoping we would never suspect her. Yeah! How cruel!
Diana, you... It wasn't me! I promise, it wasn't me.
To think she could preach about friendship after committing a violent crime.
And then try and sentence the rest of us to punishment.
Golly, you're right. If we voted for the wrong person, we would have been executed.
That's so fucked! Seriously, Diana? What the hell is your damage?
Can we at least hear Diana's side of the story?
Her side?
Well, you know, Diana has, I just think it's fair we listen.
What does it matter what she says? Look at the evidence. This case, it's closed. We know who the killer is. If you really want to ask for Diana's side of the story, then do it after the vote.
No! No, no!
Vote. That's right, we have to vote for the killer. Diana, I've proven beyond a reasonable doubt that she's the killer. I've proven it beyond a reasonable doubt, so...
No. No. No.
Why is it that when I hear her cry, I get this strange nagging feeling in my chest? Why does the tiny part of me want to believe the things she's saying? Why, all of a sudden, do I doubt myself?
Diana was the one who lured Wolfgang to the boiler room. Once he got there, she killed him immediately.
Then she fled the crime scene, hoping the rest of us would never learn the truth.
How could you, Diana? Poor Wolfie was only trying to keep us together.
But I would never murder Wolfgang.
If you don't have an alibi, then you obviously did.
But I wanted to believe so badly that you were innocent. Why didn't I see you for who you were?
If this goes on any longer, I'm gonna be sick.
What are we waiting for then? Let's get this over with and vote!
Is Diana telling the truth? How is that possible when I already know the truth? It can't be possible, not unless...
Diana was the one who lured Wolfgang to the boiler room. Once he got there, immediately.
Then she fled the crime scene, hoping the rest of us would never learn the truth.
How could you, Diana? He was only trying to keep us together.
Wolfgang.
No, that's wrong!
We know that Diana got stabbed during her confrontation with Wolfgang, but that doesn't prove she's the culprit.
Wait, huh?
If anything, what it should mean is that Diana was trying to get away from him as fast as possible.
Do you hear yourself right now?
He's lost his mind.
The stab wounds prove that Diana was in the same room as Wolfgang before his death. She's the killer!
I'm not! I'm not the killer.
Diana. Damn it, what's come over me? I'm getting all mushy and making a fool of myself in front of everyone.
Sheesh, Damon. How are you going to say all this dramatic stuff about Diana being the killer, and then say the opposite 5 minutes later?
I'm making a fool of myself. I'm making a fool of myself, and yet... when I think back on everything she's done... just because they have different opinions doesn't mean they're bad people. They clearly want the same thing as the rest of us, right? They want to go home. So, I think it's okay to give them a chance. Yeah, that's right. We can make it through this. I wish I could speak as well as you, Wolfgang. I realize everyone's been acting tense around you and Eva, so I wanted to say hi and check that you're okay. Well, in any case, if you ever need someone to talk to, just come find me, alright? Diana was always thinking of me when no one else was. She knew how frustrated I felt about everything, about Wolfgang. Of course, she tried to play it off as some kind of casual interaction between friends, but she tried to help me without making it seem like I was someone who needed help. Could someone like her really have what it takes to commit a murder? It doesn't make sense. Thinking Diana could kill another person, it doesn't make any logical sense.
Whatever. Who cares what this guy says? We finally know the killer. Let's cast our votes already.
I guess, if that's what everyone else is doing.
Remember, if you don't vote, you die. So none of you naysayers better get any smart...
Hey, Tozu.
Ideas?
Are you listening, Tozu? I need to ask a question.
Dude, what are you...
Hello, hello! It is I, Tozu, answerer of questions. You ask a question, I give an answer. 'Tis common sense it is.
Answerer of questions? I thought you were a host.
Can't he be both?
I'm a host with an ascendant in question answering. A jack of all trades, if you will.
Anyway, Tozu. According to the regulations, everyone has to vote when a trial is over. My question is, when exactly can a trial be considered over?
Are we talking in a literal or philosophical sense?
I mean, does the trial end and the voting begin once we think we've solved the mystery? Or does the vote automatically start after a certain amount of time?
I see. All right, I'll humor your question. If you ask nicely.
What?
Go on. Ask the question again.
Well, are you still gonna do it?
Tozu, can I please know the factors that decide whether a trial can be considered over?
Well, since you're so polite, I'd be a fool not to tell you. The truth is, the class trial will only end once I become bored with it.
You're joking.
Pretty much the way it's always been.
What? Why didn't you say this sooner?
Come now, it's not like I wouldn't announce a warning in advance. Tick-tock, tick-tock, that's the sound of my internal clock, losing patience. Let's start wrapping things up, shall we? I think we're long overdue for a vote. See? Smart, snappy, and to the point.
Sounds terrible!
What if you're still not bored, even when we think we've solved the case?
If that happened and all of you agreed to vote, what reason is there for me to say no?
So in that case, everyone must unanimously agree to vote before voting can be held.
Indeedy.
Alright, then, since you haven't made any kind of warning, I take it you're not bored with the trial yet.
Not yet.
In that case, I don't agree to vote.
What? No way! Are you seriously pushing back the vote?
Not until I know who the real killer is.
It's obviously Diana. She's the only one without an alibi for the murder.
Diana may not have an alibi, but even so, saying she's a murderer contradicts everything we know about her.
Since when?
Diana looked up to Wolfgang, and Wolfgang cared about her. But from the moment suspicion fell on Diana, she's been nothing but a nervous wreck. Does that really sound like someone with the emotional capacity to murder?
What's to say she's not faking it?
Even if she was, it'd be rash to commence a vote without hearing both sides of the story first.
You do make a good point.
We are not in a rush. I say we hear Diana out.
Yeah. I don't feel comfortable voting yet, until Diana shares her testimony.
Sure thing. I'm up for listening.
But...
Diana, I promise to keep an open mind if you tell me what happened, even if it's stressful to relive, until we have conclusive evidence to say otherwise. I'll hear you out.
I'm sorry. I'm really I wanted to help. I wanted to make everything okay. But all I could do was be useless. All I could do was watch him die. It's all my fault. All my fault. For doing the wrong thing.
So is this a confession, or...
No!
Huh?
I didn't kill Wolfgang. And I don't know who did. But I still failed him as a friend. I failed him then. And I failed him here. But if I told the truth, things would be worse than they already are. But now that I've said nothing...
Diana watched Wolfgang die.
It's okay, sweetheart. Come on now, take deep breaths.
Yeah, we'll believe you no matter what you say.
It's looking like Diana might actually be innocent. It's looking like that, but the nagging feeling in my chest still hasn't gone away. Damn it, what am I doing? Because of one girl, I've been doubting myself and jumping from one argument to another. If I can't piece together my own thoughts, how can I possibly piece together this case? I need to get a grip on myself. I need to keep sight of myself and the goal of this killer. Whatever is thrown at me next, I need to persevere. Because if I don't, if everyone else here votes wrong, I won't leave this place alive. Intermission?
Has all this murder hubbub left your head in a tizzy?
Sure sounds like it.
Perhaps you need a short break. Something to lighten the mood and let you collect yourself. Something like a nice cup of tea.
Tea?
Welcome, one and all, to the first episode of Tozu's Tea Time. If you haven't already, please sit back and relax. Here, we do not use our brains, but deal only in gossip. Now, a question from me to you. What are sheep good at, if anything? Most humans, and some sheep, tend to respond with a resounding absolutely nothing.
I mean, they're good at making clothes from their wool. Or blankets. Or, I don't know, what else do you make out of wool?
Sheep cannot create art or invent medicine. For goodness sake, they can't even perform music! Their limited speech and quadrupedal locomotion prevents them from reaching the heights of humans. They're practically glued to the lower echelons of the food chain.
Yeah, they're pretty bad at some stuff.
No matter how hard sheep may try, they will never be anything more than their number tags. I can't say I like that answer. Too pessimistic for me. Plus, what of the sheep who still try? The sheep who realize their fate but continue to challenge it all the same. That they can be so determined to prove their worth when humans have all but deemed them microwavable meals. Isn't that something admirable? What a shame our sheep had to be so misguided. It seems that's about all the time we have. Thank you again for attending Tozu's Tea Time. No need for extravagant farewells. I've an inkling you'll be back for tea sooner than you can say Jack Robinson.
Yes, I'm sure I'll be seeing you again soon. And that's you spelt E-W-E, in case you didn't get the pun.
Who's Jack Robinson? I have no idea. Ta-ta!
Diana, Now's your chance to defend yourself. Tell me what happened.
Ooh.
Where do I even start, though?
How about you begin by explaining why you went to the boiler room?
Why I went there? It was 'cause of a note.
A note?
2 days ago, someone slid one into my room. I never got to see who. I just heard a knock. And when I walked over, there was a note under my door.
I don't remember any of this.
Sorry. It was midday-ish, and you weren't there at the time. And I didn't show you the note later because, well, I'll just read you what it said.
Diana, as you are aware, it is our obligation to speak with those blackmail we have obtained. After receiving your blackmail and reading the information disclosed in it, I believe a meeting between the two of us is warranted. In 2 days' time, please come to the underground boiler room at 8:45 AM. Make sure to arrive promptly and close the door behind you. This is very reminiscent of a scenario in Danganronpa 2. To avoid discourse, do not show anyone this letter. Do not approach me about it either, even in private. There is always the chance someone can hear. Wolfgang.
Wolfie wrote this?
Wolfgang had Diana's blackmail? But didn't he have Jean's?
Hold on a sec. If you take a closer look, the handwriting on that note, doesn't it resemble the handwriting on Wolfgang's note?
You're actually right. Even though Wolfgang's note has been water damaged, the words I can make out were in the same messy scrawl as Diana's here.
Then someone else was posing as Wolfgang?
The killer, most likely. They must have thought his word was the only one Diana would follow.
Guess it worked, huh?
I didn't want to show this note earlier because I was scared of how people would try to twist it. Like saying I faked the note, or that I decided to kill because of it. I thought it would be better to just stay quiet. I know you guys think I'm stupid for agreeing to meet in a place like the boiler room. And I am. I am stupid. I just didn't want to disappoint Wolfgang in case he really did write the note, which was why I left my room around 8:40 AM and went downstairs.
Did you catch any strange movement down there?
No, it was just me. I did find the boiler room door hanging open a little bit, but I didn't think much of it. I just went inside and closed the door behind me, since that's what the note asked me to do.
What did you see inside the boiler room?
The boiler room was really dark, so the first thing I noticed was actually the security camera light. My eyes had to take a few seconds to adjust to everything else. But after that, I finally saw him. Wolfgang was lying in the water, making these weird noises. It didn't seem like he'd even noticed me entering the room. Not until... Wolfgang? Hearing his name seemed to snap him out of his trance, because he slowly rose to his feet. Wolfgang, are you okay?
It's you.
Huh?
I can't believe it. I really am finally meeting you.
What do you mean?
Please, forgive me. Please forgive me for what I've become.
Wolfgang?
Despite how hard I tried, and how much I wanted it to be true, I could never become you. I will always be a failure.
It's okay, Wolfgang. Look! There's stairs over here. Come over here and we can get out. I have no idea if he didn't hear me, or if he was just ignoring me. But, okay. I'll get closer to you then. I went over to the ledge of the platform, the part where the fence had a gap. Just take my hand, okay? And I'll pull you out. He slowly stumbled over, and he held my hand. I didn't really think I could pull him out. I just wanted to be there for him. It was the best I could do, because I didn't want to enter the water. Staying on the platform felt so much safer. And I really, really hate that it did. It's okay, Wolfgang. We'll get through this together, all right? I was looking at him when I said that. I was looking right at him. But somehow... Somehow I didn't think to react. When he reached inside his blazer.
Bring her back. Bring her
I tried to leave the room, but the door was locked. I didn't know what to do. I started looking around for things to defend myself with. And that's when I saw the gun.
The taser gun? Did you use it?
I took the taser, and I aimed it at Wolfgang. And I couldn't do it. I couldn't shoot him. I just backed away from him. I couldn't understand anything. Why was this happening to me? Why was I being attacked? Why can't I do anything to...
I'm not like you. I'll never be like you. I won't give up until the world knows. I won't give up until everyone knows me as...
All of a sudden, everything turned white. Everything in front of me. Except Wolfgang. In those few seconds, he became pitch black. And then, so did everything else. Even though I didn't see Wolfgang fall over, I heard it. His body cracking against the pavement, and his knife falling into the water. I waited for the gasp of pain, for him to groan or mumble or say something. But there was nothing. There was just me and the silence. That's how it happened.
What the fuck?
That man attacked you?
Okay, that's a bit to sort through. So, the spot on his neck is clearly some kind of drug entering his system. Still annoyingly unclear what the actual cause of death is.
Oh my goodness, Diana, I'm at a loss for words.
This is getting too much for me, bros. I think I'm gonna faint.
Holy shit. So Diana really did watch Wolfgang die.
But why was he so violent towards her? It's like he became an entirely different person.
The word you're looking for is crazy.
Despite how hard I tried and how much I wanted it to be true, I could never become you. Why would Wolfgang say those words in that particular moment?
How'd you manage to escape the boiler room after all that?
By picking the door's lock.
For reals?
I wasn't even thinking. I just started feeling my way back to the door in the dark. And then, well, my supply bag. I remembered the spare hairpins I always kept inside, so I felt around the bag and dug one out. To be honest, I have no idea how I managed to unlock the door. The whole thing was repeated trial and error. Just minutes of me telling myself that somehow this next attempt will finally work.
Whoa! Actually unlocking the doors? That's like hitting a bullseye blindfolded!
Now we know why it took so long for her to escape.
I realized why it happened. Getting trapped inside, I mean. The door's lock was on the outside. So, someone must have set the lock before I came downstairs, so that when I closed the door, I'd be trapped.
The lock is normally on the inside too. The killer purposely flipped it, then left the door open so you would be the one to close it. As for why the killer locked the door to begin with...
It was to frame Diana, right?
Right. The killer made Diana trap herself inside the boiler room, so they could kill Wolfgang in front of her, and force her to remain by his body.
Which is a pretty stupid move, really. Why would anyone purposefully lock themselves inside a room with their victim? That wouldn't make any sense at all. The fact she managed to escape is actively beneficial for them and detrimental to her.
Had their plan worked, Diana would only be able to escape if someone from outside entered the boiler room. By which point, that someone would be stumbling across what looks like a cut-and-dry murder case.
If the tournament folk found Diana, they would have been playing right into the killer's hands.
Speaking of which, Diana, I'm curious to know, did you unlock the door before or after the tournament attendees arrived downstairs?
It sort of happened at the same time. Like, when I opened the door, there were already people walking down the stairs. Obviously, I couldn't stay inside the boiler room. If anyone saw me close to Wolfgang's body, it would look really bad. The hallway was a bit easier to make out in the dark, so I walked over to a wall bordering one of the storage closets and hid behind it, and stayed as quiet as possible. I was still bleeding a little from Wolfgang's cut, though, and some of that blood ended up dripping onto the floor around me.
It's the blood on the underground floor! It's all coming together!
This was shortly before us tournament goers split up. And you made a run for it, yeah?
Mm-hmm. Down the hallway, up the stairs, and then as quietly as possible into my room. Since everything was still really dark, I had to patch myself using the Tozu Trinket's projection as my light. I realize this is a lot, and I know it's hard to believe without proof. So, if you guys could just give me a second.
Reaching into her makeup bag, Diana pulled out a wipe and began scrubbing at her arm.
I cleared up the blood pretty fast. Luckily for me, the cut wasn't that deep. There's still a chance it may leave a scar, though.
Holy crap!
That's awful! It's okay. I'll cover it back up again.
Why did Wolfgang attack you for no reason?
I wouldn't say it was for no reason.
You're being kind of insensitive, man.
Huh? I didn't mean it like that. What I'm trying to say is, Wolfgang's actions may look random from an outsider's perspective, but from his perspective, well, judging by his behavior, it seems like he saw something which shook him to his core.
Like, there was something in the room that Diana didn't see?
That's impossible! It was only me and Wolfgang in the boiler room!
I don't believe John meant it in a literal sense.
Wolfgang literally saw something?
I agree.
He thought he saw something, is my point.
You mean he had been hallucinating?
What did Wolfgang hallucinate for him to turn out the way Diana described?
You'd be surprised by the sort of things our minds can invent. I'm lucky to have never experienced anything myself, but I know some who have hallucinated nasty things. Demons and monsters. Or the feeling of being tortured. If Wolfgang went through something similar, I can see why he lashed out.
Now what the heck is going on at sea?
Of course, these hallucinations don't just happen out of the blue. More often than not, they're substance-induced.
I agree with that too.
Substance-induced?
Just say Wolfgang took a hallucinogenic.
Hallucinogenics?
One which induced a lot of fatigue, too, judging by the way he lumbered about in Diana's account.
It would explain why Wolfgang mostly stayed in one place.
One place, which happened to be in the water.
Seems very deliberate, aye. I reckon the killer knocked Wolfgang unconscious in order to drag him into the water, but knew he would eventually wake up again. So they drugged him with something which would basically make him despondent. As for where the drug came from...
Oh no! Don't tell me the killer robbed...
I knew exploring it was a bad idea.
It? What's this it we're talking about?
The pharmacy, obviously. Why the heck did we think leaving that place open was a good idea? Now someone's stolen an item and drugged Wolfgang. Fuck! I knew our promise was too good to be true! I can't trust any of you guys! And don't say Wolfgang drugged himself! Who wants to be tortured by demons?
Well, stranger people do exist.
That's rich coming from you!
It's just as I predicted. Exploring the pharmacy ended up paving the way for murder. Should I have made more of an attempt to stop people from exploring? Back then, all I did was... With cautious yet determined expressions, the students entered the newly opened pharmacy. Giving everyone unrestricted access to medication sounded like a disaster in the making, but having already evoked the group's ire after speaking my mind before, I wasn't about to make the same mistake twice. I'll just stay quiet, let them do their thing. Then again, nobody would have listened to me. Especially not with Wolfgang in control.
If we know where the perpetrator got their chemicals, I guess our next step is figuring out how they did the drugging?
Agreed. It would help us better understand the timeline of events, and potentially even validate Diana's testimony.
Sounds like you guys can leave this one to me. I'm the kind of person who knows someone back to front the moment I meet them. If you haven't already realized, I've gone and read this killer like an open book.
You're the last person I trust to reach a correct conclusion.
Just you wait! The second you hear what I gotta say, you'll be eating those words!
Okay. Pinning down how Wolfgang was drugged may validate Diana's testimony. The question is, how did the killer drug him?
I bet the killer took a pill and forced Wolfgang to swallow it.
Just jab him at that point.
How would the killer make him swallow a pill? There was no proof they restrained him.
Didn't the killer knock Wolfie out? Maybe that was their way of restraining him.
You can't force an unconscious person to swallow a pill.
What if it was a drug? You don't need to eat.
Like an inhalable substance?
Oh yeah, like a powder or something.
The pharmacy does have a large collection of over-the-counter sedatives, but there's too many for us to isolate any specific one.
How did the killer drug Wolfgang? Out of all the ideas being thrown around, only one has any real merit.
I bet the killer took a pill.
I got it.
When Wolfgang's wounds were discussed earlier, it was mentioned he had a tiny red dot below the bruise on his neck. During the investigation, I thought this dot was a scab from a mole or pimple, but knowing Wolfgang was drugged, it's clear to see what it really is. A puncture wound.
Considering the timeline of events, an injection would check out. If Wolfgang got drugged a little after 8:15 a.m. and was already feeling the effects when Diana arrived at 8:45 a.m., then we're dealing with something which entered his bloodstream in under 30 minutes. Any normal pill would have taken, probably an hour to dissolve.
Whilst an injection would be much quicker. I see.
That's probably another reason why the killer knocked Wolfgang unconscious. It would have been incredibly difficult to inject him if he was still moving around. Only when they had him right where they wanted, dazed and unable to fight back, did they plunge the syringe into his neck.
With said syringe being filled with a hallucinogenic.
But if this all happened a few minutes after 8:15 a.m., doesn't that make it impossible to pin a suspect?
What? Why is it impossible?
Because everybody's got an alibi for that time. I mean, Damon and I were in my dorm room, and the other party people...
8:15 a.m. Yeah, I was already in the dining hall with Jet, Mark, and Eva.
I left Wolfgang's dorm right after the morning announcement and spent the rest of the hour with Jean.
When Nona and I were in our dorm room together.
And me and Eloise were already sitting down in the courtyard.
Toshiko was giving me the medication she grabbed from the pharmacy.
And, I stayed in my dorm room until 8:40 a.m.
Oh no. If everyone can be accounted for, we really can't discern a suspect.
I can discern one.
So, we're back to square one?
Someone here must be lying.
And doesn't plan to stop.
What's screwing us over here? Is there a part of this mystery we're getting wrong? Or could it be we're overlooking something? It was ruled out as having no relation to the murder because the wires don't touch the water. But the position of it, the fact it's destroyed, the timing of the blackout. One coincidence is easy to wave off, but when it's coincidence after coincidence after coincidence, then there's something more going on. There's something more to the generator.
If everyone has an alibi for 8:15 a.m., is it possible the killer never actually attacked Wolfie at that time? But his little note said to come by at 8:15 a.m., didn't it?
Ingrid, do you remember what you said when we couldn't figure out who stole Desmond's taser?
To be honest, I'm drawing a blank.
You suggested we switch subjects and discuss Wolfgang's injuries instead, which we did. As a result, we ended up unraveling more about the case than if we had stuck to the original topic. Right now, we're at a dead end. If we can't get any more leads out of this current discussion, then that's a sign to switch our focus.
Switch our focus to what?
I want to take another look at Diana's testimony.
Mine?
Back when you were describing Wolfgang's death, something stuck out to me.
I won't give up. Until everyone knows me as... All of a sudden, everything turned white. Everything in front of me except Wolfgang. In those few seconds, he became pitch black. And then so did everything else.
The flash of white Diana described must have been the generator exploding, with the darkness afterwards being the blackout. Think about the order of events there. In just a few seconds, the boiler room's generator explodes, and Wolfgang falls over dead. Doesn't it sound like the two are correlated?
Oi, didn't we go over this already?
We did. The generator has nothing to do with Wolfgang's death. Its wires weren't touching the water.
Indeed, which is why the murder weapon is the taser gun.
Diana said she never used the taser, though.
Then she's lying!
What? That's not true! I never fired the gun!
It's all good. I believe you. Sure, nobody can dispute the gun was fired. What can be disputed, though, is when it got fired. I wouldn't be surprised if the killer fired that gun way in advance. Like, sometime before Wolfgang arrived downstairs and left it in the boiler room for us to find later.
What? So the taser gun isn't the murder weapon?
If Wolfgang wasn't killed with the taser gun or the generator, what other options are we left with?
The taser gun is the only option which makes sense. The murder weapon can't be anything else.
Are you sure about that? The true murder weapon. Is it possible there's a third source of electricity we haven't considered yet? Am I grasping at straws by thinking something like that?
And anyway, the only proof Diana never shot the taser is her own word.
Huh?
Ava! What do you mean?
All the evidence supporting your version of events is circumstantial. The note you showed us? That could be a fake alibi you made for yourself. The fact that it has the same handwriting as Wolfgang's is already suspicious.
Couldn't that just mean the same person tricked them?
If you earnestly believe Diana didn't write it, then maybe. But do you see what I'm saying? There's no proof Diana never wrote the notes. There's only her word to go by. Because if she did write them, everything about her entering the boiler room at 8:45 a.m. and being locked inside could be a total lie.
I get what you're saying. But if we run with the idea that Diana was the one waiting for Wolfgang all the way back at 8:15 a.m., then we're stuck with the issue we had last time. Why did Diana wait over an hour to kill him?
That's also circumstantial. None of us know what really went on between those two in an hour. Ruling someone out because they took a long time to murder is stupid.
Without context? Sure, I'd say the same. But since the boiler room is unlocked, anyone can enter. If Diana knocked Wolfgang out, then she took over an hour to kill him with that info in mind.
Okay, but who would enter? No one wants to make a detour down some gross, freaky-looking basement. The boiler room is probably the most covert place a person can be.
The most covert place? Her words do make sense. After all, I chose to meet Tozu in the boiler room for that very same reason.
Diana claims she didn't write the notes, and she claims she didn't shoot the gun. But where's the hard proof she didn't do any of these things?
The answer lies in what destroyed the generator.
What?
Didn't we already talk about that?
All you guys did was discuss theories, never anything concrete. Settling for a theory isn't good enough when our lives are on the line. In the same way Ava can't rule out Diana's involvement in the case, we can't rule out the generators.
So we have to figure out what destroyed the generator? What should we do? Just throw out ideas?
It's what we've been doing this whole time.
Oakley dokley. All right, everyone. Let's put our thinking hats on. If we work together, we'll unravel this mystery for sure. Ready? On your marks, get set, go!
Non-stop debate!
Why did the generator blow up?
Could have just been an electrical fault.
So, a coincidence?
Is this the best situation? To be waving stuff off as a coincidence?
Did the killer throw something at the generator that made it explode?
Perhaps it's the fault of the taser gun? The electrical discharge it released might have connected with the generator and created an overabundance of energy, which caused everything in the circuit to pop.
Probably. There's no proof anything besides the taser was involved.
In that case, the generator blew up after Wolfie got shot with the taser.
Such a dastardly taser, leaving so many victims in its wake.
No, I'm long past the point of falling for this surface-level diversion. In reality, the truth is floating just within reach.
Why did the generator...
Could have just been an electrical fault. So, a coincidence? Is this the best situation? To be waving stuff off as a coincidence? Did the killer throw something at the generator that made it explode? Perhaps it's the fault of the taser gun? The electrical discharge it released
Might have connected with the
generator and created an overabundance of energy, which
caused everything
in the circuit to pop. Probably.
There's no proof
anything besides the taser was involved.
No, that's wrong!
Unfortunately, Ava, I have to disagree.
I really don't feel the need to chip in with most of this stuff. Most of this is blisteringly obvious.
You say nothing but the taser could have been involved in the murder. But there's one possibility you didn't consider. The shrapnel in the water.
Do you mean those bits of red metal which were floating around?
Right. The ones that look like the aftermath of an explosion. Due to their proximity to the generator, it's safe to assume the two are connected.
Can't that just be debris left by the generator?
Except this debris is a completely different color, and lacks the rust the generator has accumulated. We're obviously looking at the remnants of something else, which means an object we haven't yet identified was caught in the explosion.
And floating near it was another out-of-place item.
This is it.
In the water was also an extension cord, half of which had been burnt away.
Huh? Did the cord get caught in the explosion?
Seems that cord has the misfortune of floating around the wrong place at the wrong time.
From what I saw in my investigation, the building's extension cord supply seems to be kept inside Storage Closet D. So in a way, yeah, it was definitely in the wrong place.
Storage Closet D, huh? It was hard to make out much of it in the dark. And after the power came on, Kai came screaming for us to leave our closets. But I do recall seeing some extension cords peeking out from behind a shelf.
Since we already know the killer raided one storage closet, anyone else willing to bet they raided this one too?
The hell did they need an extension cord for?
Probably something involving the generator, given its proximity to the cord.
Same thing with the red bits, even though we don't know what they are.
Right, the red shrapnel. It definitely isn't debris left by the generator, so what exactly is it? So far, nothing in the boiler room can be directly tied to the shrapnel. At least, not any of the clues that have already been discussed in this trial. If I were to flip my thinking, and consider the clues we haven't discussed yet, there's no proof what I have in mind is related to the shrapnel, but when all other options are ruled out, I can only turn towards the one that hasn't. The one thing the mysterious shrapnel might be related to.
This is it.
Hold that thought. We may be able to identify the shrapnel using context clues. During the investigation, there was a strange smell permeating the boiler room. It took me a moment to notice, but when I did, well, the best way to describe the scent would be if you mix cereal and alcohol together.
Cereal and alcohol? Talk about specific.
Mm-hmm. 'Tis a sign a chemical reaction was at play.
Wait, you recognize the smell?
Chemical reactions can produce some pretty pungent odors. Usually something to the tune of alcohol mixed with cereal, or fruits, or eggs. I noticed the smell going into the investigation, but it had completely slipped my mind until now.
Could it be a chemical reaction was caused by the taser?
The gun never touched the water. There's no reason for it to be the source of the smell.
What about the generator?
Considering the state of it, that generator would smell more burnt than anything else.
If the chemical reaction can't be explained by what we already know, like the generator or the taser gun, we need to consider the possibility that the explanation is the one piece of evidence still evading us, the shrapnel.
Can someone translate this into less complicated talk?
Something blew up.
It was just a long-winded way of saying he's using process of elimination.
I know it sounds like a stretch, but if you follow this line of reasoning, a lot more questions start getting answered. Think about it. If the smell and shrapnel are linked, then whatever object the shrapnel belongs to must contain chemicals.
So we're looking for a metal object, which is also packed with chemicals?
Surely something like that would be kept inside the pharmacy.
Looking at my notes... When we originally visited the pharmacy, I recorded everything I saw. A bright red metal object would have definitely caught my eye, but I don't see one written here.
I got lots of metallic objects in my dorm room, but nothing chemical. Just big old slabs of metal.
Big old slabs of metal. I wonder if that sounds so familiar. Hold on, that's right. What Ingrid said just now is similar to what she said the night everyone began bunking together. I guess this would explain my room too. It's littered with all sorts of fancy tools and metals. At the time, people were talking about their dorm rooms being themed around their talents. Could the shrapnel actually be the remains of the unique device that guy boasted about having in his room? The only way to know for sure is to put you on the spot. Talk to me about batteries.
It has to be you! Jet, I need to ask you something.
What's up?
Can you tell me what's inside your dorm room?
Like, a full-on list?
Whatever works.
Sure thing. I got a pretty gnarly collection of parts and accessories. Blind spot mirrors, lithium batteries, wheels, spare brakes, you name it. Oh, I even have the legendary mantle from the 1984's Grand Prix winning Speedster.
That's what I was hoping to hear.
Cool. So, why'd you want to know? Unless... Wait, I'm not being suspected, am I?
Of the killer having used something from your room, yes, but that's about it right now.
No. Don't try to rope me into this, bro. I've got nothing to do with the murder.
I know you don't. You have an alibi. The only reason I ask is because that mysterious red shrapnel may be the remnants of one of your lithium batteries.
What?
I see. A lithium battery might explain the smell in the air.
And lithium? That's an explosive substance. If it made contact with water, gosh, you'd be left with a mess and a half.
Wouldn't someone have heard an explosion, though?
I did.
Really?
During the tournament, right before we lost power.
Oi, that's right. There was a boom.
Wait! I remember hearing it too!
I initially assumed the generator made the noise somehow. But if Jet's car batteries contain an explosive substance...
Hey, Jet, were your batteries bright red at all?
Maybe?
You don't know for sure?
I never took the batteries out of their packaging. The packaging isn't red, I can tell you that, but the actual batteries? Yeah, I got nothing.
I mean, why would you? There are no cars here.
So it can't be proven beyond a reasonable doubt?
Or anything else that needs a lithium battery, come to think of it.
Pretty much.
Well, what's the reaction time of a lithium battery?
The reaction time?
When a lithium battery hits the water, how long does it take to combust? I think, once we know that, we can decide whether or not the battery is relevant to the case.
A lithium battery would be an almost instantaneous reaction, I'm pretty sure.
Mm-hmm. Lithium isn't a metal I've worked with, but it got beat into my head never to mix it with substances it doesn't like. All that electricity, the battery would have let out when it hit the water. It must have went straight into poor Wolfie.
There's warning labels on the battery for a reason.
Okay. If the reaction is instantaneous, then the battery would have entered the water only seconds before the generator exploded. That's really weird.
Is it?
According to Diana's testimony, when the explosion happened, she was still holding the taser gun. In which case, who threw the battery into the water?
Huh?
Huh. Good point. We can rule out Wolfgang, since the Blackens can only be a student who kills another student. And Diana.
Yeah, that's wrong, but I don't think it's relevant, so let's carry on.
It was only Diana and Wolfgang in the boiler room, so unless Diana herself was the one to throw the battery, then the battery can't play a part in the murder.
I didn't throw the battery! I promise!
A shrapnel and generator are too close for comfort. They must be correlated. I'll admit that Diana throwing the battery is a possibility, but that's all it is, a possibility. There may still be another way for the battery to enter the water, and until I've ruled that out, I won't settle for a culprit just yet.
If the battery is related to the case, only Diana could have thrown it in the water.
But my arm had been cut! Lifting a battery would hurt too much!
Neo batteries are pretty lightweight, though.
The battery clearly couldn't have fallen from somewhere, so it must have been submerged another way. Perhaps something akin to what Eva described?
If that battery is the murder weapon, why is there a taser gun?
Maybe it's a red herring.
Judging by the shrapnel, the battery would have landed in the water, a few inches from the generator.
Not the hardest shot to make.
Everybody's quick to say the battery was thrown, but when I consider the boiler room and which objects the killer could have leveraged, what that person considers impossible starts to sound anything but.
If the battery is related to the case, only Diana could have thrown it in the water.
But my arm had been cut! Lifting a battery would hurt too much!
Neo batteries are pretty lightweight, though.
The battery clearly couldn't have fallen from somewhere. So it must have been some... Now is not the time for jokes!
It wasn't meant to be one.
If the battery is related to the case, only Diana could have thrown it in the water.
Let me review what this says. Generator melted.
But my arm had been cut! Lifting a battery would hurt too much!
Neo batteries are pretty lightweight, though.
The battery clearly couldn't have fallen from somewhere, so it must have been submerged another way. Perhaps something akin to what Eva described?
If that battery is the murder weapon,
Why is there a taser gun? Maybe it's a red herring. Judging by the shrapnel, the battery would have landed in the water, a few inches from the generator.
Not
The hardest shot to make. If the battery is related to the case, only Diana could have thrown it in the water. But my arm had been cut! Lifting a battery would hurt too much! Neo batteries are pretty lightweight, though.
The battery clearly couldn't have fallen from
No, that's wrong!
I knew what I wanted to say, just said it with the wrong thing.
No. The battery might actually have fallen from the generator.
What makes you say that?
The shrapnel's position in front of the generator suggests there's a correlation between the two. However, it's unlikely Diana threw the battery at the generator. Not only is the boiler room difficult to see in, the generator is positioned far enough from the concrete platform that Diana, with her wounded arm, would need to stand on the platform's edge to make the shot, which would obviously put her in danger of being attacked by Wolfgang again.
Yeah. Wolfgang was really close. He could reach over to me if he wanted.
If the battery hadn't been thrown, the only other possibility is that it fell down into the water. And considering the layout of the boiler room, what else could the battery fall off of? Except the generator.
Are you saying the battery was sitting on top of the generator?
Not on top, but maybe.
I got it.
The battery may have been suspended over the generator.
Suspended over?
If the battery was suspended by something, then the presence of that item starts to make a lot more sense.
This is it.
The killer could have tied the extension cord around the battery and slung the battery over the generator. If the cord and battery were tied together at the time of the generator's explosion, it would explain why half of the cord had been burned away.
The more you explain it, the more unbelievable it sounds.
What if that's the point? Maybe the killer chose a crazy method because no one would believe it.
I don't see how weaving a cord into the mix is any more beneficial than leaving it out. If anything, the cord adds extra weight.
Which would be especially inconvenient for Diana, because her arm is bleeding.
Right. It wouldn't benefit Diana to hold the cord. So, what if she didn't? Something else may have been supporting the cord instead.
Something like...
I got it.
Throughout this trial, we've assumed the killer held the battery in some form or another.
I wonder if this would be more difficult for people who played the prologue at a different point to Chapter 1. Probably.
If the battery was on its own, the killer tossed it in. If the battery was wrapped with a cord, the killer held the other end of the cord. But in the same way something else can hold the battery, can't something else also hold the cord?
Ugh, my head's starting to spin.
Are you talking about something which could keep the cord in place?
Something to keep the cord in place. If I imagine the cord and the battery it's tied around, in front of the generator, in the stained spot where the shrapnel has surfaced...
This is it.
The killer tied the cord to the vent.
What vent?
The one above the generator. It connects the boiler room and the dining hall.
There's a vent above the generator?
You should remember some light shining into the boiler room. That's where the vent is. The vent itself is set a bit far back into the wall. So, you probably assumed the spot was a small window or something.
If the boiler room and the dining hall are separated by one vent, does this make the wallpaper thin, or...?
There's two vents. The boiler room vent and the dining hall vent. Both are connected via a small ventilation shaft. I was able to get a close look at the boiler room vent after Ava and I woke up, which is why I know these details.
How close is close for someone under 6 foot?
Ava helped me reach the vent.
By?
Letting me sit on her shoulders.
Quite the visual.
Don't rub it in.
Anyway, if the killer tied one end of the cord to the vent, and the other end around the battery, they could suspend the battery over the generator.
This also removes the annoying 8-person alibi from the tournament. because you could now remote activate this contraption from the other side of the vent.
Something like that would result in an explosion.
What do you mean?
You say the killer tied one end of the cord to the vent and the other end to the battery. However, indoor extension cords are much longer than regular cords. They can be upwards of 9 or more meters in length, as opposed to the average cord's 2 meters. 9 meters is significantly longer than the distance between the vent and the boiler room floor. If the killer wanted to tie the battery to the cord's other end, they would be tying it to something which is already submerged in water.
I see. It is an impossible setup.
Not necessarily. The killer can have greatly reduced the length of the cord by doing that.
Cut the cord using what exactly?
Scissors? That's what anyone would use, right?
And where exactly did these scissors come from?
Could have been the storage closets. They're packed with tons of stuff, so...
Well, I've been through those closets twice now, and I never saw scissors.
Not even pliers?
I didn't see pliers either.
Could the cord have been cut with Wolfie's knife?
You believe the victim set up the murder trap?
So this whole thing was a suicide mission?
That's definitely not the case.
I got it.
The extension cord is pretty thin and flimsy. If the killer wanted the battery to be secure, they need to wrap a lot of cord around it. Probably to the point there wouldn't be much spare cord remaining. Which is a good thing, because this spare cord is what the battery will be suspended by. So long as the spare cord isn't too long, the battery will sit safely above the water.
So much effort.
Agreed. How do you even submerge the battery into the water under those circumstances?
How? Simple. By adjusting the cord's position. All the killer would need to utilize is a certain aspect of the boiler room.
This is it.
It's the vent again.
Like I mentioned earlier, I gave the vent a close look after originally waking up in the boiler room. Part of my inspection included opening the vent to get a better look at the other side.
The vent can be opened?
Not all the way, but far enough for the vent to cause a domino effect if then closed. In our case, a domino effect involving the extension cord tied to it. If we assume the vent must be open for the battery to remain a safe distance above the water, we end up with a pulley system. To prevent the battery from entering the water, the vent is literally pulling the entire cord backwards. Ergo, it's not just the killer's own measurements keeping the battery in place, but the vent itself. Having opened one of these vents before, I can tell you how tough they are to move.
Putting my fingers around the grate directly in front of me, I pulled as hard as I could.
A lightweight battery definitely isn't heavy enough to pull one shut. It takes an actual person to close one, which is great for the killer, because it means they get to maintain full control over when the battery enters the water. If they close the vent, the cord should slide forward and submerge the battery into the water. When that happens, the boiler room water becomes electrified by the battery's components, which in turn causes electricity to pass directly into the body of Wolfgang, who is standing in the water.
Exactly which vent is the cord being tied to?
The boiler room vent.
Funny. Earlier, you said there's a small vent shaft connecting the boiler room vent to the dining hall vent. Assuming the killer is operating this trap from outside the boiler room, since we know there were only ever 2 people in that room, how would they even be able to reach the boiler room vent? Like you said, there's a separate vent in front of it.
She has a point. I've been assuming the cord is tied to the boiler room vent, but I failed to consider the ventilation shaft. It becomes considerably harder to reach the boiler room vent if you have to reach down that shaft first. Not just that, I never tested to see if the boiler room vent can open inwards, I only got it to open outwards. By that logic, a vent on the opposite side of the shaft...
This could only mean one thing. The killer never tied the cord to the boiler room vent. They tied the cord to the dining hall vent.
That just creates the same problem as before, but reversed. Instead of the dining hall vent making it hard to close the boiler room vent, it's the boiler room vent making it hard to reach the dining hall vent.
While the vents may seem like an obstruction, especially since they can't be opened all the way, there's a very easy workaround. All the killer needs to do is fit the extension cord between the grates of the boiler room vent.
Oh yeah, the grates. You mentioned something about them earlier. Right, when you described opening the boiler room vent.
Wrapping my fingers around the grate directly in front of me, I pulled as hard as I could.
If you can fit your fingers between the grates, there's no damn way you can't fit a cord.
Exactly. After which, you can slide the cord through the ventilation shaft, and out the opposite end, for the killer to then go and tie to the...
Actually... Hello?
Hey there.
What is it now?
There's something I still don't understand about your theory. It's to do with the logistics of the cord.
The logistics?
Its size.
We're back to discussing this again. Never mind. I'll find a way to combat his argument, just like I've done countless times already.
I understand the boiler room vent can be opened. Maybe not all the way, but enough to fit an extension cord through. What's bothering me, however, is that the boiler room vent was closed during the investigation, which means it must have been closed during the murder.
His argument might have made sense if it weren't for one fatal flaw.
I understand the boiler room vent can be opened, maybe not all the way, but enough to fit an extension cord through. What's bothering me, however, is that the boiler room vent was closed during the investigation, which means it must have been closed during the murder. There were no opportunities for the killer to enter the boiler room and close the vent. From my understanding, you and Kai entered the boiler room after you heard Diana leave, which, hypothetically, gives the killer only minutes to close the vent. Assuming the killer is a third party.
Third party? Damn, the last thing I need is people doubting Kai and I need to rethink my approach.
I understand the boiler room vent can be opened, maybe not all the way, but enough to fit an extension cord through. What's bothering me, however, is that the boiler room vent was closed during the investigation, which means it must have been closed during the murder. There were no from my which, assuming I understand the boiler room vent can be opened, maybe not all the way, but enough to fit an extension cord through. What's bothering me, however, is that the boiler room vent was closed during the I understand the boiler room vent can be opened, maybe not all the way, but enough to fit an extension cord through. What's bothering me, however, is that the boiler room vent was closed during the investigation, which means it must have been closed during the murder.
I don't see a problem here. The killer doesn't even need to open that vent, because they could simply slide the cord between the grates.
Indoor extension cords may be thin, but the plugs on either side of them aren't.
I'll cut through those words!
If you insert the cord through the boiler room vent first, it's possible to fit the cord through.
Being far too early with my attempted counters. I don't know why it didn't advance the first time, though. I hit everything and it didn't move on. So I thought that was it, but no, there was more.
You just need to start with the internal plug. The cords in Storage Closet D have a slim internal end. This can easily be slid through the gaps in the vent. Once the killer ties the cord around the dining hall vent, presumably with a knot, the cord won't be at risk of sliding back out either.
I see. When put like that, whether or not the boiler room vent was closed isn't really relevant.
How'd you figure all this out from some shrapnel and an extension cord? This is crazy.
At the same time, what he's describing sounds plausible.
Since the battery was suspended over the generator, it's no surprise the machine ended up the way it did. Fortunately for Diana, she was safe by virtue of remaining on the platform. I imagine that was also the killer's intention.
The killer kept her on the platform?
They must have known they were injecting Wolfgang with a hallucinogenic. So, it's possible they hoped his behavior would scare Diana off from entering the water. Although, even if Diana did die, the moment people realized only she and Wolfgang entered the boiler room, they'd probably call the whole thing a murder gone wrong.
Well, all of this certainly changes things.
Huh?
If the killer is someone who needed access to the vent, and needed to be operating from the dining hall, then everyone who attended the tournament is a suspect.
Be it so.
What?
No way!
One of the tournament attendees is the killer. Damn it, how did I not realize sooner? The fact the killer could even access the vent means they must have been in the dining hall at the time of Wolfgang's murder.
So we can reduce it down to 8 people. Damon, Kai, Grace, Eva, Cassidy, Jed, Mark, and John.
It was probably Cassidy. She set the whole thing up.
Hey, I was only trying to improve the mood.
It wasn't me. I was playing a game with Damon when the lights went out.
I had to play music.
Me too.
You never touched my equipment.
I meant I was watching Kai and Damon play.
I was spectating as well.
Me too.
Me 3. And Cass 2, I think? I was too focused on the game to remember who was or wasn't there.
If everyone's telling the truth, then all 8 of y'all were crowded round the same spot?
Near the right wall where the TV was set up. It's also the furthest wall from the vent.
Seems like someone is lying again.
Tournament participant who flipped the vent. I could deduce who that person is by determining everyone's positions directly before the blackout. The problem is, I myself have been totally preoccupied with the game. I never got a good look at the actual people around me. Never got a good look. Wait, is that it? While I never got a good look at the others, I can still deduce their general positions, and if they were near me, from whether or not I heard them. Think, Damon, think. Who and what did I hear back then? It was you. The only person I never heard was you. Oh boy.